to the Men of Steel podcast here with me, Charles Prodigy Ritchie. As well, just say thank you once again to the lovely, beautiful, and honorable actress, as well as a friend as I could call here, Olivia Weber. Again, she can be followed on Instagram, Olivia Weber Model. It's just brought some great updates with what she's been involved in as far as her acting. As they got season 2 of The Deadlands, hopefully she'll be like the mainstream star in it there. It will push further and go mainstream on TV. It's a streaming series, right on Netflix. And of course, she was also going to be featured in a DSC commercial. And then one of the other things we're also talking about, she'd be in a magazine called Dreamy Magazine, which will be released in a month. And Am Dudley was one of the people she mentioned. Sorry if I messed that name up, but yeah, right now we're getting ready to pick back up and get ready to get back into action with some Steeler football, as a matter of fact. And basically, as I was alluding to, one thing, an article that was published out a couple of days ago, as we took a look at it, was from DK Sports. As a matter of fact, Hines Ward was making a proclamation that when you take a look at everything, the difference between him and a guy like Antonio Brown, Hines Ward, as a matter of fact, former two-time Super Bowl champion and Super Bowl MVP, when you look at it. And which, by the way, on a technicality, still holds all the Steelers' receiving record. I mean, most of the receiving records, when you look at everything in their respective careers. And he was just a little bit frustrated. I mean, of course, with the main things about how much drama this was on his team, he's not loyal to. I mean, overall, we really look at the numbers and everything. And you look at everything, Hines Ward is still number one in receiving yards, 12,083. I mean, arguably, if Antonio Brown would have been on his team this year, he would more than likely hit touchdowns. And as far as like yards per game, Antonio Brown is number one in that area, while Hines Ward is ninth. But I just want to ask you real quick. I know it's been this point years, we move on. So much stuff, battling, going back and forth when you look at it all. And of course, I think one of the biggest things that Hines Ward made it clear, and this is for his quote, he says, for me, it's always about representing the black and gold no matter where I'm from and where I'm at all over the world, where it's at. I just think I'm always going to have a special place in Pittsburgh because I bleed black and gold. Yes, we were a running team. I played with Jerome Bez. We ran the ball 40, 50 times a game. You can't compare my stats to what Antonio Brown is doing right now. It's not even comparable. But on the big games when it matters, it's a great pride being a go-to guy, being someone the team can lean on. I played like that. I learned from Lance Swan. I was stalwart. I get it to be a former player. I do get embarrassed talking about the drama more than the football itself. But I think it's just pretty accurate. A lot of fans will echo that, his concerns and his frustration as well. As we, it's not been like the smoothest of roads. I mean, in like this recent year, as we make this transition, I mean, and I'm sure there's still a lot of people kind of like turned off by the fact it's like, what did we really give up for a guy in Antonio Brown as we look at it? But like I said, it's an ongoing topic where they have to find out over time, see how well Jesus Schuster will be able to carry the load for the black and gold as we take a look at it. But yeah, I think personally, in my opinion, I'd still probably have to give it to Hines Ward. I mean, in that regard, I think I'd give it to him because the pride he's put on. I mean, when you think about being a Pittsburgh Steeler, of course, you always want to see guys pick off. You want to see them become a star in their careers. No one wants to feel like they're cheated in a game like football, where you're putting your butt in the line and doing too much, go above and beyond. But let's face facts too. For right now, until that's changed with the guarantee money, and I know there's been a lot of things being speculated out there that's being battled. Maybe at the end of next season, which 2021, they'll hopefully have a new CBA negotiated in time And I know NFL owners, Roger Goodell, it's been reported about a week ago that they're trying to make this push sooner rather than later. And they're going to do some stuff to make that process happen. They're taking those steps. As of right now, they're trying to have more meetings. They had about 3 meetings so far. But the fully guaranteed contracts is definitely an issue. But as far as where it goes into Pittsburgh, I mean, listen, bottom line, Pittsburgh is a hardworking, bust your butt type of town where it's a lot of respect, a lot of pride, a lot of tradition, where people really work hard and and they hustle. I mean, when you think about everything about Pittsburgh, I mean, when you look at what it overall means to be from that town and going through the ups and the downs, when you look at it, I mean, it just represents a lot. And just when you put on that uniform at the end of the day, people are going to be wanting to know how you repping that brand, how you going to be doing what's better for us at the end of the day. I mean, how much are we going to be taken care of? And that's the thing where people got to look at. And that's where I feel like a lot of people they'll seem to tend to take a little more of the Steelers organization because this is what they built up. This is what they do. And this is what kind of pride and higher expectations we hold ourselves to as an organization, but we expect the players put on the line for as well. So I'm going to have to give the Hines Ward. Like I said, simply because at the end of the day, I mean, he was a guy who still wanted to get his money too. Let's not forget. I mean, he had to hold out for a little bit. I mean, obviously it did not extend into the season, but he was a little frustrated with negotiations. And look at what happened. I mean, they pretty much he did his role. He gave everything he had to that team. They played as a unit. I mean, Jerome Bettis' final year, when he decided to change his mind and come back and play in the Super Bowl wars and be in his hometown after, his 10th season, 9 previous years of frustration. You look at everything that the Steelers did. I mean, you appreciate what those 2 championship teams did. I mean, one of the things, aside from it being a family, it was also what Ben Roethlisberger called a band of brothers. And I think that's the theme right now. I hope that's what's taking place this year as we move a little bit more forward. And to go a little bit more into Hines Ward's comments, aside from that, he said, I understood the culture. I've been here. I played there 14 years. When you talked about Steelers football, it was never about off the field stuff. It was always about, let's prepare for the Pittsburgh Steelers because they're going to hit you in the mouth regardless on offense and defense. That's what it should be about. And I couldn't say any more than I agree. Well put, Hines. I think that's definitely how you have to look at this point in time. So, again, if you guys want to feel free and share your thoughts right now during this live stream podcast. Right now, the number to be reached is 312-209-2232. Again, that number to be reached is 312-209-2232. You can also follow me on Twitter at Prodigy Richie. And right now, we are just streaming on 2 platforms on this edition of the Mass Steel podcast, as we are right now on Facebook Live and, of course, on YouTube. Facebook Live, you can check out my Mass Steel podcast page by searching at Mass Steel Nation, capital M, capital S, or you just do Mass Steel Podcast, YouTube channel, Mass Steel Podcast. And let's continue to break things down a little bit more as we move along. And I know it was 2 days ago, and this was a couple of days, but I want to just put it out there real quickly. Just want to say happy belated birthday, who's, as a matter of fact, the 3rd Defensive Player of the Year in Steeler history, as well as 9-time Pro Bowl, 6-time Pro Bowl, 4-time All-Pro. No, excuse me, 6-time All-Pro, 4-time Super Bowl champion, of course, first ballot Hall of Famer. I'm talking about middle linebacker Jack Lambert. And yes, as we looked at everything on that time. But right now, I got a phone call coming in here right now, and looks like I'll be joined here in just a moment. Hold on 1 second. Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, just watching your show. Didn't know if you wanted a little bit of assistance.
Sure, feel free to hop right in, man. Give me one little second. Cool.
Well, actually, I'm reading your caption here. I actually did that interview with Hines Ward. I think DK Pittsburgh Sports picked that up, and that kind of helped generate some traffic around that story. And I think the thing that the Browns pretty much saying is his legacy can't be for the Browns if you're talking regular season statistics. I mean, back then the Steelers were a predominant running team, and back in the NFL was still more of a balanced offensive attack in terms of how offenses went after defenses. But I think Ward's bigger point, if you actually go on my story and read more of his quotes, it was more of, he wanted his legacy to be more of like John Stallworth and Swans, where, he made the clutch play. He may not have had 8-10 catches in a game, but he would make that clutch play to help the Steelers eke out those victories, specifically in the postseason, pairing or looking at Brown's or Ward's career. He doesn't want you to just look at the numbers. He hopes that you're going to look at him in the same ilk that you would a Swan and Stallworth, because in his eyes, that's truly what defines a great Steeler receiver is, what did you do to help your team win championships? I think that, for Ward, he looks at Swan and Stallworth, and that, the way they played and their legacy is good enough to be in the Hall of Fame. And I think for him, that's his argument. If you look at his postseason statistics, they're top 10 in league history if you're looking at receiving yards. I think it's like maybe 6 or 7 all time is Hines Ward. A lot of those other receivers are in the Hall of Fame. They're in the top 10. And Julian Edelman is number 2, and that's his biggest argument to make the Hall of Fame. So I think that was kind of Ward's larger point with this whole thing was, don't measure me by numbers in the regular season, because the way the NFL is going, you can't compare what receivers did in the 70s to the 90s to the 2010s to the 2030s, because the trajectory at this point is receivers are going to continue to put up greater numbers than the previous generation. But if you look at one thing that is timeless, it's clutch catches. It's what you did to help your team win. And I think those are the tangibles and intangibles that Ward wants fans to remember, not necessarily how many yards he averaged receiving per season, even though he is top 25 all time in receiving yards, touchdown catches, and overall receptions.
Yeah, and I think, that's definitely a fair point. I just want to say right now, as I currently got this man on here, I just want to say, Brian, thank you very much for surprise joy right here, and share your thoughts right now. Ladies and gentlemen, just needs no introduction. Talk to me right now with him, who also had in this article, Brian Diarlo, 247 Sports. Be followed on Twitter at Brian Diarlo. Yeah, I definitely feel like that's definitely a fair point to make. I think, and only because I don't know if it's just so much like shame he's just feeling just watching this move forward. I mean, as far as just like a matter of pride. And because when you think of guys like a Lynn Swan or a John Stallworth, or even other guys who have donned that uniform over the years, it's definitely about a matter of respect and tradition. I mean, you could even throw a guy like Keith Miller, that had some ways. Who the Steelers have not had a tight end and literally at this point in time, 4 seasons if you really think about things going on it. Just guys who just went out there, they did their job, they made big impact plays for the team. Someone you can count on to suit up on a daily basis and put a lot of respect and recognition into who we are as the Steelers and what they're trying to do.
I think it's going to be really neat for fans on that topic when the Steelers Hall of Honor starts to honor some of the more recent members of the Steelers that won Super Bowls. I think that's what the Hall of Honor was made for, and I think Art Rooney II has alluded to that.
Yeah.
That it's more of a way to honor great Steelers whose careers probably won't be in the Hall of Fame. I'm not even talking about Donnie Shell, Andy Russell, LC, guys that should be in the Hall of Fame and just aren't. I'm talking about guys like Keith Miller, who you mentioned, James Ferrier, Aaron Smith, Casey Hampton. These are guys that won multiple rings with the Steelers, won multiple AFC championships, are part of the rich fabric of the franchise's more recent history. Those are the guys that I think that, Ferrier and Hampton and Miller, I mean, Aaron Smith, those guys aren't going to make the Hall of Fame. That's where the Hall of Honor, I think, for the Steelers is going to be a really neat thing when guys like that will be enshrined. Because, like, I mean, I think that's the difference between, and that's where I don't think, honestly, all the time that the Hall of Fame is the end-all be-all. For individuals that may have craved that, I don't think anybody should be shamed for wanting to be in the Hall of Fame. I don't blame Hines Ward for wanting to be in the Hall of Fame. It'd be weird if he didn't want to be in it. But I think that sometimes it's better when a prestigious franchise puts you in their Hall of Honor because they're acknowledging that what you did,
right,
when you were an employee for us, made an everlasting impact that when fans buy a ticket and when they enter our stadium, they want to see your name. This monument is a constant reminder of, hey, these guys, this guy, they're the reasons why we are what we are today. And I think sometimes that might mean more to guys than the Hall of Fame induction, even though they never say it. So I'm looking forward to those years where those guys get into the Hall of Honor because I think Steeler Nation is really going to love seeing some guys that maybe made 1 or 2 Pro Bowls or a guy like Heath Miller that, maybe should be in the Hall of Fame. Because of the impact he had. Heath Miller was an excellent blocker and one of the most complete tight ends of all time. And it's a shame that he won't be in the Hall of Fame because he played the era of, Tony Gonzalez and just before Shannon Sharp and, Antonio Gates and guys that did have receiver-like numbers. But you know what? Heath Miller has his rings and Antonio Gates and Gonzalez don't. So I think he'd take his 2 rings in the Steelers Hall of Honor over no rings, no Hall of Honor, and a Hall of Fame induction.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, too, because one thing I'm hoping you could stick around for a little bit of a moment here, because I was also reading another article, too, which I'm going to get into, as far as, like, the top 7 pass rushers Steelers had all time in their franchise history. But sticking with, I mean, you're mentioning how, like, some guys who are probably not going to get their chance getting the Hall of Fame eventually, but they made their contributions to this team and putting this franchise at relevant, being a hard-nosed, physical, grinded out 6 minute of football. I mean, when you look at, and one of the guys too, who I like to think of too, who should be in there if he hasn't been already. I forget if he's been announced or not, but I know we already had Kevin Green in the inaugural ceremony, who's actually 3rd all time in the NFL in sacks with 160. But I mean, his only 3 years in Pittsburgh, he only had 35 and a half. I mean, made the playoffs every year. This guy was an absolute beast, averaging almost like around 12, 13 sacks a year, and being a big part of the reason, too, especially when you had Rod Woodson, who was hurt in that 95 year, getting to the Super Bowl, doing that without him. And the people I'm alluding to is Greg Lloyd. I mean, that's another guy right there who's only got 53 and a half sacks in his career. He's probably got one more way, went over to like the Carolina Panthers and called it a career about 20 years ago. I mean, that's another guy right there. When you think about like making contributions and stuff, that's a guy who I like to see in there as a matter of time. I mean, that's another example right there.
Yeah, I don't know why he's not in. Maybe that he had a bad falling out with the Steelers. I mean, he was a volatile guy. There's no question. I mean, he was a very. I mean, the way he was on the football field, a lot of people say that's the way he was when he wasn't on the football field. I didn't obviously cover Greg Wood in person. I wasn't old enough, but I remember watching him that cut off. Said I wasn't high by disposition. I mean, he was kind of like a Jack Lambert of the '90s. I mean, or a Dick Butkus. I remember he, was rough on Dan Marino and got flagged for it, and Brett Favre. I mean, he was a scary, nasty guy, and I think him and Greg and Kevin Green were obviously, they spearheaded the Pittsburgh defense, and obviously with Rod Wood there too, and the defense, the back end, and Carnell Lake and Jason Gill. Then I can go on and on. That was a great defense, probably the best that never won a Super Bowl. Them and the Purple People Eaters, but. Lloyd, the real shame is, after the 95 season, if you say, okay, what current day Steelers on this roster are going to be in the Hall of Fame? You'd probably say, okay, well, DeMarty Dawson in the center, Kevin Green probably, Greg Lloyd for sure, Rod Woodson for sure. And the fact it took Green so long to get in, and the fact that, and the reason why Lloyd never got in is because he had that, career-altering injury in '96 that wiped out his entire season. He comes back in '97. He was still good, but he wasn't Greg Lloyd anymore, and really the defense had kind of changed, and Dick LeBeau wasn't there anymore, who he really thrived under LeBeau and the defensive coordinator before him, Mike Capers. And the defense really wasn't centered around him anymore to be a star, which I think it was in the earlier part of the decade. So, it's weird because he played with the Steelers, he played, 9-10 years, 5 times a Pro Bowler, 5 years in a row. He was the runner-up defensive player of the year '95 to Bryce Pop of Buffalo. He should have been, but it is what it is. But you can't really say his career was quote-unquote cut short, but it was. I mean, he was 31 years old when he sustained that injury. I mean, he should have had at least, if Greg Lloyd had 2 or 3 more years at that level, he's in the Hall of Fame. So the fact he's not even in the Hall of Honor is weird. Obviously, there might be something there with the team, but I don't know. I mean, if he doesn't get in the Hall of Honor in the next couple of years, I would say that there's some. I mean, he's probably the best Steeler that's not in the Hall of Honor that's eligible, not named Troy Polamalu, because Polamalu's not in it either, and he absolutely should make it this year.
I mean, especially when you consider the fact, though, too, that he's going to be eligible if he's going to make it in first ballot or not this year when it's his term to get into the Hall of Fame. I mean, like I said, there's still a little skepticism for people that if he's going to get in or not, not his first attempt. I mean, he's going to be a Hall of Famer at some point.
He'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think there's going to be an outrage if he doesn't, and they're probably going to make this a 20-member Hall of Fame class. So if there's 20 members getting in and he's not one of the 20, there would be a legitimate outrage by not only Steeler fans, but a lot of fans. I mean, look, Ed Reed got in as a first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, maybe people think Ed Reed was slightly better than Troy, but I think that there's unanimous thought that Troy Polamalu is a first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, you can replay this video if I'm wrong, but I think there's going to be at least 2 Steelers in this Hall of Fame class. It won't be any of the 70s guys, unfortunately. I think there's just too many guys from that 70s team that are – I don't think there's enough, but I think that the consensus or the thought is there's already enough guys from the 70s that are in that Hall of Fame. So I think guys like Donnie Shell and Andy Russell and could be the best that didn't get in. But I think that Faneca and Polamalu will for sure get in at 20, and maybe Hines Ward. Hines Ward's going to get in at some point. He was too good not to be in the Hall of Fame, especially if you're talking about putting in somebody like Julian Edelman. I think there's going to be at least 2 guys in the Hall of Honor next year, and I think this will be a big year for Polamalu. I think this is the right time for the Steelers to put Polamalu in the Hall of Honor. And I think they were waiting for maybe this year to put him in because now he'll also be up for the Hall of Fame. So I think in general they've maybe been waiting for this moment to happen. But they've also been waiting for some healing to go on because Polamalu did not leave the Steelers under best terms. And a source told me when he left the Steelers, he looked at them and said, "Don't expect me to come back for any reunions." Yeah. So, there was absolutely some bad blood between Polamalu and the team. He didn't come back for this past year's celebration of the Super Bowl 43 team, the 10-year anniversary. So, maybe that's what the Steelers are waiting for. Maybe they're thinking, okay, we'll wait till after he gets inducted into the Hall of Fame. Maybe because, he's going to get inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2020. The question really for me is going to be, is he actually going to show up? Is he going to pull a Terrell Owens and just do something private? For better reasons. Owens did it out of kind of a middle finger to the media. Polamalu's, it might just be because he's a mild-mannered, shy person that just wants to do it somewhere else. But it'll be interesting to see how he handles his Hall of Fame induction speech, and if the Steelers do put him in the Hall of Honor. Those would be things I'm interested in seeing in the near future.
Well, you know what? I know a better way how he can do it. You know what that is? He could be doing another Head and Shoulders shampoo commercial. You know what? Hey, I tell you what, if Terrell Owens could do it from his hometown school, I could see Troy Polamalu accepting it from a gym somewhere working out.
In Hawaii, I see him doing it for some sort of charity. I know that.
Or just doing a live video broadcast or saying thank you, but he's not going to physically be there in person. I'm sorry to cut you off, by the way.
out there. And I think he knows how much joy, Dick LeBeau, God willing, if he's around next year or whatever it is for him. I think he owes it to himself to go. And again, he can decide to celebrate any way he wants. That's kind of one of the perks of getting an honor like that. You decide how you want to do it.
Right.
And, I think he'll still ultimately go because I think he respects the Hall of Fame. He respects the process. I think he doesn't go. I don't think it's not because he respects it. I just think that he knows it's probably the better thing to do. I think he knows that would create unnecessary drama if he didn't go. And that would I think the thing that frustrated me with the Terrell Owens situation was that it took a lot of attention away from the other people. Instead of talking about how great of an event it was about the fact that Owens wasn't there. So I don't think Polamalu is going to want to create attention for the wrong reasons, and that's why I think we'll go. It will be interesting to see how he talks about the Steelers because there's no secret that things have not been great between the two since he left because he didn't get to leave under his own terms. He wanted to continue to play, and they pretty much made it known he can keep playing, but it won't be for the Steelers. It'll be for somebody else.
Well, I tell you what, I got two names aside from players that should be in, and they have big hands on this team. It was definitely from the front office, and I know you're probably thinking like Kevin Colbert, but hold on, let's let him wait a little bit, and he'll get his due time. But I think there's two guys you have to consider. Number one, of course, Dick LeBeau. I mean, being the defensive coordinator for like about nearly 2 decades right there with that team, being a couple stints with Bill Cowher, and of course with Mike Tomlin going on to be a head coach. I know he's made it known, especially ever since leaving the Steelers. He always said he wanted to be remembered more as a Brown than anything. But I mean, I still remember his Hall of Fame speech almost 10 years ago. This was back in 2000. See how the whole Steelers organization come out there and support him. That was beautiful right there. But number two, I got one guy who I don't think really gets enough attention, and he should be in the Hall of Honor. And I'm not seeing him in here because you talk about Bill Nunn, who's definitely one of the hard hustling working scouts for the team to put together that. No, I know that, but this is the guy who I'm getting. Yeah, no, well, the Hall of Honor, I should say. Hall of Honor. So my guy who I'm looking at, if you're going to talk about Bill Nunn from last year, you have to talk about Dick Haley right now, who's actually going to be 82 years old this year in October. I mean, Dick Haley right there, I mean, when you really think about things, I mean, he's like probably like second behind like Kevin Colbert right now as far as like with wins, but still, he was the first team that led a team to 4 Super Bowls, Steel Curtain Dynasty right there. I mean, that's a guy who had a huge hand on input, especially, I mean, I know you have, like I said, Dan Rooney working with his father, but Dick Haley deserves just as much credit in that collective effort with those guys, as well as Dick LeBeau on the defense coordinator side.
Yeah, and Tom Donahoe.
Yep.
I mean, he's another guy. So, yeah, I mean, and he made a great because he was, really spearheaded that rush. Also, I mean, George Pearls, the Steelers defensive coordinator in the 70s, and I think, like you said, Dick Haley did a great job with the scouting department and everything. They were ahead of their time with some of the things they did. I mean, I do think at some point, Merrill Hodge, if we're talking about players, more of this kind of the man he was during after his career, even Tunch Ilkin and Craig Wolfley, their continued contributions to the organization as broadcasters and overall, philanthropists and whatnot. So, yeah, I mean, I think that there's definitely a lot of deserving people. It's I mean, and this is a dark horse that, it's funny now as the kids of the 90s are now adults, and I'm one of them. Cordell Stewart, he's an interesting character, and I think he's someone that, fans that are around, the 30-year-old range to early 40s that were kids, and really, I mean, I'll say it, I think Cordell really brought in a lot of new fans. His excitement as a rookie really, I think, I mean, I can speak for myself. That got me into football was the buzz around Cordell Stewart. When he came in, you never knew what he was going to do. Usually he turned into a big play.
Right.
So I think that he should definitely at some point be in the Hall of Honor because, he, in my opinion, really he created some of the most exciting moments in franchise history. Did not result in a Super Bowl title, But I would argue that the 97 season is the most exciting, arguably, it's a top 5 most exciting regular season in franchise history. I mean, it really was when you look back. And Cordell was at the center of all of it. I mean, 3 overtime games, 3 overtime wins. The greatest comeback in franchise history should already be in as well. I mean, just because, maybe not already, and there's only been 2 classes, but within the first 5 years of the Hall, I would love to see Cordell Stewart get in there.
Yeah, and no doubt about it. I mean, Cordell Stewart was one of those breeds of quarterbacks with Randall Cunningham, Steve Young. I mean, guys where they were just multiverse, where they just showed you like that dynamic. And also, too, I mean, when you really think about things, it just wasn't that he was also just playing quarterback. Let's not forget once upon a time, too, he was also playing a role of, like, receiver as well, too, like McDonald, where he was in some Wildcats. And it didn't take until his 3rd year with the team, because remember, he had to wait behind Neil O'Donnell, as a starter. Then the next year, it was Mike Tomczak after they couldn't come to an agreement. Yeah, Tomczak is the number 1 quarterback. Then it was Cordell Stewart's turn in 97. And there's only 2 good years where he had like about over like 2,500, between 3,000 yards was 97 and 2001. He had those 3 straight years not making to the playoffs. I think when they didn't get back to the playoffs and you had good defense that was working their butt off, a lot of people kind of like forgot about how elusive he was. I mean, his dynamic. So it's like it almost kind of faded away when they weren't back in the postseason or winning big. And I think a lot of people, too, because I remember there was a post up last night, and they're asking me, who do you think was the worst backup quarterback in Steeler history? And my response, I probably have to still go with Landry Jones right now at that point in time. And then I probably have to,
it's not even close.
Well, I understand that, but here's the thing, too. With a guy like Landry Jones, my only concern was he had a decent arm, but as far as winning games, the significance when I was hurt, I think that's when the frustration came in with the fans. But as far as, like I said, like Cordell Stewart, like I said, he was in that breed at the end of the day where he was those dynamic quarterbacks with not just throwing, but also a good runner at his position and well-versed.
Right. I have this thing with Landry Jones. I don't think he was that bad. They don't make the playoffs in 15 without him. I mean, he comes in the Cardinals game and leads the second half comeback. He comes in against Oakland late in, was it week 9, and sets up the game-winning field goal. Again, he wasn't, a great – I mean, I think everybody points to the Cincinnati game in the playoffs where he comes in and throws that pick. But, I mean, those were probably the worst circumstances, to enter a game where you're playing against a team that knows your offense, that just wiped out a 15-0 deficit. They're playing with all the momentum, and you have to, lead the team back. And I'm not, hey, that's what you're paid to do, get the job done. But I feel like, unfortunately, that's how Steelers fans remember him. I mean, he had a winning record as the Steelers quarterback. And, people talk about, the Steelers are 16-1-1 against the Browns this decade. Who has 2 of those wins? Landry Jones. Kind of provided some nice Week 17 memories against Cleveland in the 16 and 17 seasons. So, I mean, Graham was awful. He's probably the worst quarterback I've ever seen try to play for the Steelers. And Jim Miller's up there. They were not very good. And I think that I would say probably one of my biggest criticisms of Cowers after the 95 season. Why didn't you give Cordell a chance to compete to be your starter? I just feel like when you put in Tomczak, that was just a message to your team that we're not good enough this year. It was like a bridge year. Like, I feel like they threw that year away. And the issue was, I feel like that stunted Cordell Stewart's growth in 97. Because if you let him start in 96 when you didn't think you were going to win the Super Bowl anyways, he gets a year to learn from his mistakes. Then 97, he comes in, he doesn't have to deal with that learning curve. Maybe they win the Super Bowl if Cordell gets an extra year of experience. I don't know. But, the Steelers have had some pretty decent quarterbacks, fortunately, in their day. But, Neil O'Donnell people don't love, but he got him to a Super Bowl, and you can't dispute that, right? I mean, he got it done for them enough to get them to that Super Bowl, albeit he played horrifically in that game. But he actually had the Super Bowl record for a while with 28 completions. But he had those 3 interceptions, and 2 of them really cost them that game, which I think if you had to pick a game where you could change the outcome, I think a lot of Steeler fans would pick that Super Bowl that they lost to Dallas.
Right. And real quick before we move a little forward, once again, folks, we're being enjoyed live. And I just want to say thank you very much for tuning in, Brian, by the way. Brian Diarlo of Interactive Sports, Interactive host and online host of 24/7 Sports right now. You can follow him on Twitter at Brian Diarlo. I just want to say thank you to you guys tuning in. Always complain. I think they know what to put all the Steelers in the hall, and they forget it was less games back then. Also, I got Barry Egger, too, who has a little bit of disagreement with you here. He's saying Neil Dow was the downfall of the group. The defense was one of the Steelers' group in history. And like I said, I mean, no doubt about it. I think a guy like Neil O'Donnell at the same time, he wasn't a Terry Bradshaw. He wasn't a Ben Roethlisberger. But at the same time, too, I mean, the only problem with Neil O'Donnell, I don't think he was necessarily consistently healthy or available for most of his games. But when he was there, I mean, he was pretty much like the next best thing you had. And he pretty much did a decent job. I mean, of course, not everyone's going to have the All-Star game and the championship games, those clutch moments. But like I said, he did enough to captain that ship. And he showed the heart of a champion when losing an AFC championship game the year before. You know, the old story that people hear when Bill Cowher's daughters were watching, they confront and one of them scolded him in the locker room. I think it was Megan Cowher, who's actually married right now to the Stanley Cup champion of the LA Kings. She was saying, like, you know, why didn't you give it to Barry Foster? He could have got you like 4 yards. You know, I mean, that was that famous game. And I think he was dedicating that game to like his father, but I think his father passed away. Then a year later, I think it was dedicated to his mom. And he showed the heart of champion tenacity. And guess what happened? Made a critical 4th and long conversion to keep the drive alive. They took the lead against the Colts. They came down to the Steelers' defense, closing out that gap and nearly avoiding a Hail Mary scare that sent the Colts to the Super Bowl. But like I said, Neil O'Donnell, in my opinion,
that was on a 4th and 3 play, just like the year before.
Right.
Andre Hastings for 9 yards.
But I mean, 4th downs, those are still like where you kind of hold your breath. I mean, especially in the playoff moment, think your season's going to be ended.
You know what happened to the play before that, though? It was a foreshadowing of the Super Bowl.
Right.
He threw a pass right into the hands of a Colts linebacker, Quentin Coriot, and Ernie Mills puts his hand right in and slaps it out, or it would have been a pick 6.
Wow.
And the very next throw, he hits Hastings for 9. Then the very next play, he goes to Mills for 37, which in today's NFL, that would have been a catch, but this was 1996. And that set up the Van Morris game-winning touchdown. And really, that is, if you had to vote on, give me the top 5 greatest AFC championship games ever, that has to be in the top 3. I mean, I would put New England's win this past year in the top 3 over Kansas City. And I'm not saying for a rooting standpoint, because no Steeler fans going to put a Patriot win in the top 3. I'm just talking about entertainment purposes. I'm putting last year's AFC title game in the top 3. I'm putting the Colts win over New England in 2006 in there, and I'm putting Pittsburgh's win over Indy in there as well. And really, I mean, that is probably the most underrated championship game ever. I mean, that game literally came down to a Hail Mary. And if Aaron Bailey catches that, that is the greatest AFC championship game ever. I think the fact that he didn't catch it and that it ended with an incompletion is why it's higher. And the fact that the Steelers didn't then win the Super Bowl. Because I think then if you win a Super Bowl, then it becomes like maybe even remembered more. So, but yeah, it's a great game. You know, and Neil O'Donnell will always have that at least. You know, those Steelers, you know, I know they didn't win a Super Bowl, but I think it would hurt more if they never got there. I mean, that's what Kansas City's dealing with now.
Right.
That's what the Jacksonville 90s teams are dealing with. Like, they never even got to one. So,
no, and that's why I make the point, too. It's like you have to look at it from this way. The year before, they lose to the Chargers, heartbreaking fashion. But again, like I said, the year later when Rob Woods gets hurt in the first game of the season against the Detroit Lions, trying to make a tackle on Barry Sanders, and then you have a guy like Neil O'Donnell who's been available for most of the season, Ryan, good defense. Like I said, sometimes you have to show in a career that, you know, you get knocked off your saddle, but you have to hop back on that horse and get back in the battle, and that's exactly what he did. part of a champion a year later. Unfortunately, doesn't win the Super Bowl, but he gets there at least. And that's where I'm referring to. But anyway, I just wanted to just move along here real quickly. I just want to just wrap this up real quick. I would love to hear your perspective on this. And I was just reading up, and this is usually a segment I have there, who's ranking the 7th greatest pass rushers of all time. And this is who he's got. So he's got outside linebacker James Harrison, followed by L.C. Greenwood, who Harrison's got 8.5, Greenwood 73.5 sacks. You got Kevin Green, who had 35.5 sacks with his 3-year stint with the Steelers, third on the all-time sack list. Left outside linebacker Jason Gilden with 80 career sacks, 77 with the Steelers. Outside linebacker Joey Porter with 98 career sacks with the team. Well, 60 with the Steelers, actually. And left outside linebacker Lamar Woodley right there. And I got my list, but I'd like to hear your reaction to how he's got those guys ranked for like top 7 pass rushers of all time.
I don't know who maybe technically was left off. It was a good list. If you're going for 1 year, you got to put Chad Brown in there because he was great in '96. But no, I have no really beef with that. I think James Harrison is probably number 1 all time. I mean, I think that it's a shame that Dwight White probably needs to be in there somewhere. But the issue was he played his entire career where stats for sacks was not individually counted by the NFL. But I know that he didn't wreak as much havoc on the passer as LC did. I mean, and even Joe Green put a lot of pressure on quarterbacks. Probably would have had a lot of career sacks. I think that's what's hard about this list. You really can't. And was Greg Lloyd on that list? He had to be, right? I don't know if I heard his name or not, but I mean, Greg Lloyd has to be on that list as well. But no, I mean, that's a great list. And
I haven't seen him, but this is how I got my order ranked up. And I actually did some physical research. I actually Googled some names. I mean, as everyone knows, just to recap, when everyone's thinking about the term sacks, remember, quick history lesson, ladies and gentlemen, sacks was not recognized as an individual stat until 1982, which is an unfortunate thing. But, like I said, I was able to find out what Google was allowing me to pull up as far as in that category. And this is how it's actually listed. I'm going to just read off this top 10 list only before I get to my list. So really, when you look at the actual sack rate, because this is the way it should be, you have James Harrison, of course, at number 1 with 80.5 sacks. If they were to count Joe Green sacks, he'd be number 2 on this list, which means he would beat out Joe Green, not Jason Gilden. Joe Green had 78.5 sacks for his career. Jason Gilden had 77. L.C. Greenwood at 73.5, who's number 4 on this list. Joey Porter with 60. Keith Willis with 59. Lamar Woodley with 57. Greg Lloyd with 53.5. White with 46. And Cam Hayward with 45. So that's an unofficial list. If you count those guys before 1982, if you were to re-rank it and acknowledge those, that's how it should be. But as far as my list, this is what I come up with. And I go with, of course, James Harrison, no doubt just because of his longevity in his career as an outside linebacker to play as many years as he did. I mean, 16 years, that's not easy to do these days in the physical game of football, especially, I think, at that position, but it's 8.5 sacks. Number 2, we'll put Mean Joe Green at 78.5. L.C. Greenwood at 73.5. Then I will go with Green, 35.5. Joey Porter, 98. Then I would add Greg Lloyd, to your point, with 54.5. And last but not least, Cam Hayward. And the reason why I say Cam Hayward, if you really look at, he's in the top 10 in that category. But when you really look at the official list off, like, say, a Pro Football Reference, a guy like Cam Hayward, he's 8th all-time in Steelers sacks. So there's one guy that was left on there. I have to say Cam Hayward. I mean, who should have been on that list. And, of course, Greg Lloyd. Right there, those 2 guys. And one more if you want to put on there, too, if you want to make an argument for him. Well, I think doesn't get enough credit. How about a guy like Lawrence Timmons, who's actually 10th technically on the official list of sacks with 35.5, played 10 seasons with the Steelers, even though he had a lot of help, like, with the linebackers he had around him in, like, a James Harrison, Lamar Woodley. Yeah, he still worked his tail off. That would be my list for like the top 7 if I were the car or Kurt's.
I would love to do a top 10 linebacker list.
Yeah.
Not even, and I think I have done that in the past. I think Lambert takes top billing. I mean, Tony Dungy says that Ham's the greatest outside linebacker he's ever seen, so we might argue with him. And then I'd probably put Harrison 3, and then we'd have to start doing some deep diving there. I mean, I know at the end of my list, I would have Gilman, Porter, and Levon Kirkland would probably be number 10 on that list, because Kirkland had a really nice run there in the late 90s. It was one of the more unheralded Steelers of the 1990s teams they had. But, yeah, I mean, they've been blessed with a lot of great pass rushers, great inside linebackers, great outside linebackers. I mean, I would defy – any team. I did a Steelers dream 53-man roster earlier, or actually late last month, and I defy any NFL team to have a roster as deep as Pittsburgh's. Probably the Packers would probably be the only one that I could see that can rival Pittsburgh. Because if you look at their quarterback depth chart, I mean, shoot, you've got Bart Starr, over Aaron Rodgers. So who are you starting there? Who's going to be the third string, quarterback? So I think the Steelers have to beat with the receivers. I mean, that actually would be a great debate. I mean, and then when you really talk about the greatest teams of all time, everybody always says the Steelers be included in the 70s, but you've got to look at what the Packers did in the 60s. And I know that only 2 of those count in the Super Bowl era. And obviously, Green Bay didn't play against the other half of pro football because that was the AFL. But, I mean, they are, the last great pre-Super Bowl team, and they actually bled into the Super Bowls. And I think they have just as many Hall of Famers, if not more, than the 70 Steelers do. So, that would be a great debate to have sometime. Probably not tonight.
Yeah.
But, all-time Steeler pass rushers, if I had to pick one, it would be Joe Green, just because he single-covered in his heyday, 1969 to 74. I don't think there is a better defensive player ever in pro football than Joe Green, ever, at any position from 69 to 74. That's why when people say who's the greatest defensive player ever, to me it's Joe Green, because before he lost feeling in his left shoulder in 75, he was literally unblockable. And I think for that reason, he'll always be number 1 in my book.
Yeah, and no doubt about it. And that's just one thing, especially like with the pass rush, as far as like sacks. I mean, not too many guys from the Steelers are in that official top 10 list as far as like all-time lore. I mean, really, the guys, when you look at it overall, are probably like in there. I mean, you'd probably say, I arguably say Kevin Green, Joey Porter, Jason Gilden. But at the same time, too, even those guys are not in the top 10, or most guys are top 100, but that goes to show you what overall Pittsburgh Steelers did as a unit. They had all hands in when you really think about things, and just as a unit. And you're mentioning about the Packers, like, defense right there. But, if there's one more you want to add in there, too, who really did pretty solid, I think within that time, I can make an argument for Bill Parcells and the New York Giants with Lawrence Taylor right there, and those group of guys right there. What they did in the 80s, think about it along the way. Just being like firm theirs on guys' careers, like a Joe Montana, a Joe Theismann. Just pretty much scaring the living daylights out of people coming in there, and then having to duke it out in the Beast of the East division in the NFC East, which was just as violent, going through like the Eagles, the Cowboys right there. I'll definitely have to throw the Washington Redskins in there as well. But the New York Giants, not the Redskins. But it's the only reason because they struck so much fear and pretty much jacked up, like I said, 2 quarterbacks' careers in Joe Montana and Joe Theismann.
Consecutive weeks in a row, defensive dominance in championship play. You have to look at like the 85 Bears.
Right.
You have to look at the 2000 Ravens, even though they didn't play against great opponents. You have to look at the 74 Steelers.
So I think Kerry Carson was the other guy with Taylor, I believe.
Right. And you have to look at the 90s.
Yeah.
What they did against San Francisco in the 89 NFC title game, and then what they did against Buffalo in Super Bowl 25. Those are 2 – the Giants' defense, they weren't asked to win the game in Super Bowls, in those 2 games. But, they won a Super Bowl with a backup quarterback, which only two teams have done. The 90 Giants and the Eagles in 17. So
Right.
they pretty much knew they couldn't lay an egg. I mean, they weren't going to win any shootouts. They were going to win a game where they were going to have to hold the opposition in the teens. And to hold that 49ers team, I think 13 points. Yeah, 13 points. To hold that Bills team to 19 points a week after they had scored 51 against Oakland. I mean, that's unbelievable. And obviously, I mean, Bill Belichick was the brains behind that operation, but he had to have the players to execute that game plan. And like you said, the legacy, I mean, of knocking out Theismann, knocking out Montana. I mean, they ended – I know the Niners won another title 5 years later, but, I mean, they ended the 49ers dynasty. I mean, that's the closest any team has come to winning 3 in a row. I mean, Pittsburgh got pretty close, too, in 76, but with Franco and Rocky being hurt, I mean, they were no match for Oakland in that game. But, I mean, the 49ers were healthy. They had all their horses. They were ready to go. I think everybody already thought they were going to be in it, and the Giants went in there. So, yeah, Charles, I couldn't agree with you more. And Dallas has always had underrated defenses when they've been good. I mean, the 90s Cowboys, the 92 team, led the league in defense. Doomsday defense, they only have, Randy White. I don't think there's a third one. Harvey Martin, I don't think is in the Hall of Fame, or Charlie Waters, or Cliff Harris, or any of those guys, D.D. Lewis, Robin Cole. So, there's been a lot of good defenses.
Well, one thing I do want to correct you on a technicality, but Curt Ward, remember, technically he was not supposed to be the starter 20 years ago. It was actually supposed to be Fred Green. And I want to say they were playing the Redskins, and he got hurt in the preseason, and Curt Ward started. That's okay. No, but I'll give you one more, too, a surprise name, too. He did not start in the Super Bowl, but he at least got a chance. There's 2 more guys, I'll say, that got the chance to ride up into the sunset eventually in their careers. Bernie Kosar, former Cleveland Brown, came to the Dallas Cowboys in 1993 when Troy Aikman got hurt. He came down a huge stretch that really helped prevent that team from going off the rails. Even though he had guys like Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, I mean, that's one guy. And then number 2, who actually was the starting quarterback in the beginning of the season, then it got handed over to TB great number 12, whatever the heck you want to say his nickname is. I mean, Drew Bledsoe, who got replaced by Tom Brady, those 2 guys you can make arguments for. Like I said, especially a guy like a Bernie Kosar, Cleveland Brown, who had their hearts ripped out of their chest multiple times by the Denver Broncos, those AFC Championship games, and they had insult to injury, and the Steelers beat them in heartbreak fashion in the 2002 playoffs.
Man, those are good examples, Charles. I don't know how I missed those, especially Tom Brady. And how about a guy that almost pulled it off in Ferragamo?
Okay.
I mean, they didn't pull it off, but I mean, Ferragamo, I think it was I think Mike Webster. Mike Webster said it. He said that Ferragamo outplayed Bradshaw in Super Bowl 14.
Wow.
But Bradshaw had those, 2 deep throws to Stallworth. He had that one big throw to Swan in the second half. And I mean, but Ferragamo, if you look from the start of the game to the end of the game, played better than Bradshaw and was sacked 5 times and and all of that. But he kept his medal, and I mean, they had the lead going into that fourth quarter. I mean, if the Rams pull that Super Bowl off, I mean, that was. I mean, I think I have more respect for that game the more it goes. I think I used to look back on the 70 Super Bowls and say that 13 was my favorite. 14 has to be right up there because of the drama. The fact they almost lost to Ferragamo. It really only trailed the Super Bowl 13 less than a minute.
Right.
Less than a minute. And they didn't trail beyond like midway point of the second quarter. So, I mean, that was the game where if they were going to lose, there it was. And only 2 of those games were they trailing in the fourth quarter. Super Bowl 10 by the slightest of margins, and then 14 by 2 points. And, Ferragamo, I mean, and I mean, this is, he jinxed himself after the game. He said that they'll be back, and they never went back. But, they earned respect in that game. They just weren't able to get it done.
Well, I just definitely want to say thank you very much. We're definitely going to conclude this, but I want to just say thank you very much for joining in, sharing some love, and then expanding your article with the Hines Ward. Thank you very much for a lot of the corrections right there and helping me out there a little bit. Sorry if I fumbled that up a little bit, though, on the show here. That's
you didn't.
No, but
I saw your title.
Yeah.
I actually just finished it on Saturday. We're not celebrating that.
I'll still give him a happy birthday shout out for that, just regardless.
There you go.
I mean, just
in my article, I am wishing that, and my birthday wish to him is that hopefully one day that him and the Steelers can reconcile, and I think they will, but it's just going to take some time. So thanks, Charles.
No,
I always appreciate you.
definitely, man. You know what? This was fun, and you know what? There's just one thing. If you and I love talking about a little bit more, especially me at this point, I love talking a lot of football right now, especially around this time as we're getting closer to training camp. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, the one, the only, Brian DiArdo, interactive host and CBS reporter of 284-7 Sports. You can follow him on Twitter at Brian DiArdo. And in closing, I'll just say that Super Bowl 13 and 14, especially 13, when you saw so many blowouts happen earlier on, they were just one of the ones that stood out. Rarely were as close to contested battles where we saw all these crazy, insane battle in the 2000s when we saw hardly any more blowouts. Brian, I want to say thank you again, my man. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for the company. Thanks for the love. Thanks for the support. I'd definitely like to put you back on here one day. Let's talk some more topics throughout the season.
Yeah, man, my pleasure. We'll do it again soon. Thanks again.
All right, bud. You have a good rest of your night and cool off just like everybody else. I know how you're doing this hot summer weather at all. I got to start quenching my thirst. All right, man. You have a good one. Bye-bye. All righty. Well, just want to say thank you very much, Brian DiArdo, and thank you very much. I just want to say real quick, big shout out to Otis McCray, Harry Edgar. I hope I'm saying that correct. There's an E here. I'm sorry. And then, of course, a good friend of mine, Derek Upshur. I've been meaning to catch up with you. Sorry if I haven't been in touch. Just been concentrating a little bit over here with this podcast. We'll definitely keep in touch, my friend. Well, I just want to say thank you for everybody for tuning in throughout this podcast. Leave in the comments you did. Again, the number going forward, if you guys want, feel free to chime in, just like how Brian DiArdo did on the show. It's usually Mondays and Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. Definitely be more consistent throughout the season. Like I said, there's going to be times where it's probably like one day a week versus 2 times a week because there's hardly any activity while we're waiting for the training camp about this time. But I will be on it. And I just want to say thank you, guys. Especially a big thank you to Olivia Weber for kicking things off here on the Minnesota podcast about her battle and acting for her. As I always leave you, don't be trolling, be rolling. Here we go, Steelers. Here we go. I gone.